Everybody, welcome to the show. Around the nation, right here, TYT Nation. I'm your host, Jeff Waldorf. Got a great show for you guys today. We have, of course, the wonderful Ron Placone, contributor to TYT Nation, joining us today. And we have a very special guest joining us probably for our first segment, about 15 minutes in. We're going to have TYT investigative reporter Nomiki Konst joining us for a segment. We're going to talk about the Democrats. Ron, you have just wandered into a show of aggressive progressives today. That's what we're doing here. We are going to just rail against the Democratic Party today.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wheelhouse.
I actually do that. I do that a lot.
Well, good.
I spend a lot of time in the aggressive progressive world. So
great. So you're going to be a natural here. This is going to work out really, really well. We're going to talk about the IDC Democrats in New York. So we're going to go after those guys. Apparently, they seem to be working with Republicans. The Democrats working with the Republicans to help Donald Trump? No. Really? Yes, that's what we're having here. We also have Bernie Sanders. How does Bernie Sanders feel, or how did Bernie Sanders feel about Hillary Clinton's slogan during the election? Remember, I'm with her? We're going to talk about that. We'll talk about that. That'll be a fun segment. Then what we have is something a little bit more serious. We have the Democratic Party taking more corporate donations now than they did before. So this is after the election where they got destroyed by being, of course, in bed with the giant corporations. Now they're taking even more money. And again, it has something to do with getting them on board for Donald Trump's agenda. So that's lovely.
Well, you know what they say, Jeff? I say this a lot on the Jimmy Dore show. If you don't learn from history, you're bound to win in 2018. That's the old saying. You've heard it too, right?
No, I haven't heard that one. That's a new one. That's very interesting. I wonder how that works. Is that like the step one, take lots and lots of money from corporate donors? Step two, I don't know. Step three, profit. Is that what it is?
Step two, lose. Step three,
profit.
You still profit.
You still profit, whether or not you lose. So great. And then we have a Russia story, except that it's not one of those Russia stories. It's a climate change story. How climate change could blow up Russia. Fascinating, isn't it? Great.
Good thing that's just something the Chinese made up, or I'd be worried.
Oh, yes, that's true. That's true. And if we do have time, which seems unlikely, but we'll do our best, there is a story on Trump rally, or I should say a couple of Trump-supporting beta cucks are suing Donald Trump. This is fun. We're going to have fun. If not, we'll have that story for tomorrow because it's going to be an amazing, hilarious story. So, let's see. Do you think we can knock out that I'm with her in about 10 minutes?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Now, during the general election campaign, Bernie Sanders, of course, campaigned in favor of Hillary Clinton against Donald Trump. Now, what he didn't do is adopt that ridiculously stupid slogan, I'm with her. Now, already, that's a ridiculous slogan for a politician. Turns out Bernie Sanders felt the exact same way. In the book Shattered Inside Hillary Clinton's Doomed Campaign, The Hill's Arnie Parnas and Sidewire's Jonathan Allen write that members of the Clinton campaign had reached out to Sanders' aides in late September to try to share a script of an ad that they wanted Bernie Sanders to record for the Clinton campaign. Now, in the ad, of course, Bernie Sanders would tout her education plan, her health care, and minimum wage proposals. Now, he would also talk about how then Republican nominee Donald Trump was wrong about climate change and the economy. He's wrong. Which, yeah, that's true. And, of course, all of that is fine. Now, the contention came at the end of the script where, of course, he was going to say the words, I'm with her. Here's what Sanders reportedly said at that. Quote, I don't want to say that. It's so phony. It's so phony. Which is true. That is a bad slogan. Now, Ron, before I get to you, I want to tell you why I think it was the worst. Because basically what it did is that it made the entire campaign about her personally, not her policy, not her vision for America. What it was is that it basically said that, hey, you're supposed to be with me. But wait a minute. You're a politician. You're running for my vote. You're supposed to be with us, not the other way around. I mean, I'm with her. What the hell is that? Even the supreme narcissist Donald Trump, his slogan was, albeit a little bit better. Very, very simple, but effective. In fact, he kind of stole that whole thing from Reagan, that make America great. Well, this one's make America great again. But at least that's something that energized people. So Donald Trump, if anything, he's at least decent at selling his own name. And Bernie Sanders had a future to believe in. But what did Hillary Clinton have? I'm with her. So, Ron, what do you think about this slogan?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It was a completely terrible slogan, and never at any point was it, she's with us.
Yes.
It was always, I'm with her. And I think that's very a lot of poetic justice, because that's kind of what that campaign was all about. Get on board with her. Well, gee, she's doing everything she can to spit in the face of progressives. We don't give a shit. Get on board with her.
You got to be
your
with her.
Alternative's Trump. She's not Trump. That's her selling point. She's not Trump. She's not Trump. So if you're not with her, you're with Trump. That's all that campaign had.
Yeah.
That's all the energy that campaign had. And it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough because a lot of times, you know, to really simplify it at the very basic, positivity is what wins in a presidential. Because keep in mind, a lot of people, they vote based on personality. They vote based on confidence. That's why Yes We Can defeated No We Can't. Donald Trump was a Yes We Can brand. Hillary Clinton was a No We Can't brand. When you simplify it, I mean, that's not the only reason Obama won in 08. I mean, a stale hand sandwich would have beat the Republicans in 08, and Obama had one of the best grassroots campaign maybe ever in the history of politics. But I'm saying, generally, that slogan will beat the No We Can't slogan. Hillary Clinton was the No We Can't camp. Donald Trump was the Yes We Can camp. Yeah. Make America great again. I'm with her. We're not him. We'll never have universal health care. We can't have $15 an hour minimum wage. We can't ban fracking. We can't have a Green New Deal. No, we can't do any of these things. That's too much. We got to be more centrist. No, we can't do that. Sorry, progressives. I know that I really split the base up and I should really reach out to you if I want to win. But here's my VP pick, a candidate to the right of me who can't even beat Mike Pence in a fucking debate. And the only reason we got Virginia is because of Gary Johnson. So, yeah, no, we can't. So, yeah, it was a terrible slogan. It was, sadly, a grossly appropriate slogan for that campaign.
Yeah, no, vision. We don't need no vision around here. We're Hillary. We're better than Trump. That's what they ran on. Yeah. Not only that, you touched on, of course, we can't have change. Why can't we have change? Well, because everything's already great. Go establishment. Yeah, that plays well. That plays awesome, as we saw. I mean, look, you know, what was, again, Hillary's message, everything's awesome. The establishment is actually super unpopular if you had followed any sort of the polls. I thought Clintons were supposed to be poll watchers. No, apparently not. There was triangulation, but all the triangulation was to the corporate donors. And the corporate donors, to them, everything was fantastic. So, yeah. Again, you know, let me get to a quote here from some of the voters. See, they decided not to use this ad after all, right? And not because Bernie Sanders wouldn't say I'm with her, but they decided to not use it because some of the voters had doubts about whether Sanders fully supported Clinton. You'll love this. Mm-hmm. Quote, people felt it was him delivering his message, not Hillary's, said one Clinton aide familiar with the focus group responses. What was, again, Hillary's message? She didn't have a message, did she?
No.
But people didn't feel that it was an authentic pitch for her and what she wanted to do. It even had some backlash and folks saying that he's not really supporting her. What does that even mean? What is that? Like, he's campaigning for her, right? He was out there, he was doing rallies saying, vote for Clinton. Vote for Clinton. Trump's horrible. Vote for Clinton. This is what we're going to do together. We actually got together and are working. I got her to tweak her policies to the left a little bit. So go ahead and vote for her. And yet people were like, it's not enough for the Clinton people, right? This is a case of the Clinton voters not being satisfied until the rest of the left fell in line and deified her like a certain section of Democrats did. That's the feeling that I get from this. Like, you have to make her into some sort of god. Like, oh my God, Hillary's so perfect. I can't believe I stood against her in the primary. Well, we need to come together, and she's absolutely perfect now. No, winning the primary didn't make her faults go away. In fact, it puts them on display.
Winning
a little bit more. So that's the whole problem here. Look, we're not going to deify, progressives were never going to deify anybody. We don't need a savior. We don't want a savior. What we want is good policy. What we want is a politician that actually we can trust to fight for that policy. If they're going to earn our vote, we have to know that they're going to put us over their giant corporate donors. And we did not have any confidence that Hillary Clinton was going to do that. Now, we didn't have any confidence that Trump was going to do that either. We knew he was going to sell out to the corporations as soon as he could. So we were stuck between a turd sandwich and a giant douche. Mm-hmm. So that was 2016. That was
pretty much, man. Yeah, I mean, pretty much. And yeah, I think the slogan speaks volumes to that.
It really does. All right. Let's get Nami on the line. So, Nomi, sorry. I have a hard time with names. So, if you didn't notice already. So, I'm gonna try to make this work. Here we go. A couple of minutes early. Hello. Do we have you? I don't think we do. Hold. No, I think we're trying to connect still.
Hello.
Hey, Nomi. Welcome to the show.
Yes.
Hi.
Hey there.
You hear me okay?
I was about to call you. That's great. Yeah. Let me just put my headset on really quickly. I apologize. I'm outside. I was trying to find a quiet place, but every place has music. So.
Oh, no problem.
If that doesn't bother you guys,
no, not at all.
That's just the life of being in New York.
Okay,
give me 1 second.
Did I accidentally pause? No, I didn't pause you, Ron. Sorry. You were like very, very still for a second there. I was like, oh shit, I messed it up.
I'm just waiting in the wings, but I'm good.
All right.
Cool. Let me.
Technology.
I apologize. 4,000 things happening at once. Okay.
Just trying to get this thing working.
Just wanted to make it work, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Hang on. I swear to God, I'm not 19 years old. All right. If you guys can hear me well, I can hear you well, and I'm ready to go.
All right. Awesome. So I'm gonna start. We're gonna do this segment. And I'm gonna introduce you here. Okay.
Right.
So there's a bit of a struggle going on internally within the New York Democratic Party. I mean, for me, from what I've read on it, it's sort of like an open rebellion, but against progressives. Now, the IDC, which stands for the Independent Democratic Conference, has essentially, in my view, defected to the Republican Party. They work with the Republican Party now. Now, the 8-member conference, which is supposed to create a Democratic majority in the New York Senate, has actually made the majority party into the minority party. Now, here to talk about that more is TYT investigative reporter Nomiki Konst, and, of course, a new member of the Unity Reform Commission. Congratulations on that, and thank you so much for going around the nation with us today.
I really appreciate it. Yeah, the Unity Commission, I am incredibly grateful to Senator Sanders for appointing us. He's really picked an amazing group of individuals for this commission. Mm-hmm. He named them last year before I was at TYT, so obviously it's a little bit tough covering the DNC, so I'm not going to be covering the Unity Commission, understandably, but I will be there.
Right.
So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So now, for those of us who are not familiar with what's going on in Albany, New York, Can you kind of give us a summary of what's going on with the IDC, what they're about, and what they're doing to stymie progressive policy in the state?
Yeah. First, thank you for covering this. This is an issue that has been going on for several years in New York State. New York State is a complicated state. It used to be more conservative upstate than it is now. And as we know across the country is becoming more progressive, more populist, but the lines being drawn because Republicans have control of the legislatures, they're able to draw these districts so that they have more support than, is adequately represented when you look at the popular vote. So New York State in particular is a very progressive state, and it has gotten more progressive. Years ago, the Republicans would find ways to get a couple of the upstate New York Democrats to work with them, and they had these sweetheart deals, but it was never an actual conference. Now the state could control, as you said in your opening, the Democrats could control the Senate, the Assembly, which they do control, and of course the governorship, which is Governor Cuomo, who is a Democrat. Right. And if that were the case, Democrats would be winning, getting legislation, incredibly progressive legislation passed easily, left and right. And, let's not forget that New York State would be one of 6 states controlled by Democrats in our country, when the Republicans at the national level have made it a strategy to take over these state houses. Right. So, the types of things that are not getting passed are single payer, free, incredibly, real free education, the DREAM Act, ethics reform, closing out LLC loopholes, campaign finance reform, voting reform. I mean, there's so many issues that haven't been addressed in our state when it is really popular to do so. So there are these 8 Democrats who were elected in Democratic districts. Right. They're a member of the Independent Democratic Caucus, or Conference, excuse me. It started in 2010, and then it's grown in size to 8 as of this year, with a few newly elected lawmakers and those who just joined the conference. And, they claim that nothing could be done in Albany that was progressive without them. But, their rhetoric doesn't add up. They say that they're supporting things like the DREAM Act and single payer. But when it came down to voting for them in the budget last week, they voted against them. So these are people who have cut deals with the Republicans so that they get bigger offices, more control in conference, meaning they can pick which legislation to bills to push forward, and of course, money as well. And they're getting money from Republican donors. They're getting money from charter schools. They're getting money from hedge funders. They're getting money from the real estate industry. And as a result, Governor Cuomo has enabled them. Let's just call it out. Everybody knows Governor Cuomo loves the IDC, and they're the ones who are holding up progress so that he can look like the progressive champion, when the reality is he's really watered down legislation and not supporting transformative change in this state.
So would a good example of that be the recent college bill that was passed in New York, the higher education piece of legislation that was incredibly watered down? Now, before I really looked into it, I thought, okay, hey, this is good. This is good progressive legislation. And now looking at it, it's like, wow, not really. I mean, it's a step in the right direction, but again, it's very, very watered down. And so, yeah, that's.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's. I think the New York Times has been very good about this in their editorials, in their reporting, and they've taken it to a national level, as I think we have as well. Is it really a step in the right direction? It's a step in the right direction if the Senate Democrats take control of the Senate, in 2 years, or if these IDC members come back to the Senate and they're able to pass sweeping legislation. The reality is that this gives 32,000 middle-class New Yorkers who could probably afford this, state tuition anyways. It gives them free tuition, and it doesn't give free tuition to a whole lot of other people. The governor says, well, this would all be covered by Pell Grants and other things. Well, number one, Pell Grants are cut in the national budget, so let's just put that out there. But it also, it's not real if it's not addressing the concerns of those who are struggling to get into school, to pay for schooling, for housing. Traditional students today are those who are working. So many students, as we know, don't complete college because not because they're not intelligent or hardworking. It's because they can't afford to.
Right.
And this bill does nothing to address those people's concerns and needs, including room and board.
Right. There was also a part of that where I'm kind of blanking out on it, but on what it's called. But basically, you have to for as long as you get these grants to go to college, you have to stay and work in the city of New York,
Yep.
essentially to pay this whole thing back.
The state of New York.
Yeah, the state of New York. And so it's like, well, wait a minute. What if somebody gets a job offer out in California or gets a job offer somewhere else or wants to relocate somewhere else? Because New York has this, I mean, enormous standard of living there. I mean, very, very incredibly expensive. And, some of the degrees that you might not get or you might get might not make enough money to be able to cover this stuff, to be able to live and work in New York and still, it's not a perfect piece of legislation. And do you think that this is one piece that has definitely been affected by the IDC, by people that are progressives or called themselves progressives or campaigned as progressives, but were actually Republican in nature? I mean, is it fair to say that these IDC members are at this point little more than Republicans, or am I being unfair?
I don't think in terms of where they stand on issues, for the most part, who knows? Because they don't vote with Republicans 24/7.
Okay.
They caucus with Republicans.
Right.
They say they don't, but they're chairs of committees. And you wouldn't be a chair of a committee if the Republicans didn't make you a chair of a committee. So they're actually caucusing the Republicans.
Right.
And not only that, their main job is to hold up progressive legislation. And if they can't prove that, I would like to see their proof. It's that education bill, the truly progressive legislation bill, or the truly progressive single-payer bill, was not passed because there were 8 members of the IDC working with the Republicans. And they always look to this other Democrat. There's a Democrat who actually caucuses with the Republicans but is not a member of the IDC. And they say, well, it's his fault. No, it's all of their fault.
Yeah.
All of them. No Democrat should be caucusing with any Republican.
That's crazy.
So
no, they shouldn't. Especially if it's
gotten to a point where it's out of control.
Right. It's essentially right there to, as you said, block progressive legislation from getting through. So on that, I mean, no doubt people have noticed, right? At this point, a lot of the voters are probably kind of pissed. I mean, what kind of pushback are you seeing?
So it's interesting because for years, the Senate Democrats have been trying to raise awareness on this, and it's really been, the Albany press corps who's been interested in, maybe some insiders, but even well-informed New York progressives and political folks didn't really understand the dynamics. But, this is a post-Trump world we live in today, and I think what's fascinating about this is that you see Bernie-crats and Hillary-crats alike really ticked off that the IDC is in existence. And when you follow the money, you realize, these are tools of a real estate industry that's out of control. The developers, and of the charter schools, which, of course, in Betsy DeVos' world that we live in today, is not very popular in the Democratic Party. But furthermore, this is also a vehicle of Andrew Cuomo's. Andrew Cuomo it's no secret that he plans to run for president, and I think a lot of folks believe that he is exploiting the IDC so that sweeping ethics reform and closing out LLC loopholes, which allow him to raise, essentially an unlimited amount of money through LLCs for possibly his presidential race. I think that, this is a person who's investigated for corruption, for shutting down his own anti-corruption commission when they looked into his office. This is a person that Preet Bharara has said is not, is morally reprehensible. I mean, so people are upset, and they're showing up at the IDC town halls. I believe there's one tomorrow night, and they, Indivisible had invited one of the senators who ran as a Bernie-crat. Her name is Marisol Alcantara, and she said yes, and then she realized, probably I assume realized this is Indivisible, and she decided, she's not going to go.
Right.
So they invited, one of the Democratic leaders in the Senate to come and speak instead about the IDC. So people are showing up. They're angry. They're protesting. They're feeling it. The press is not great. At the state level, even Governor Cuomo has been called out for the budget process, and he's very defensive about it because he's been campaigning on this free tuition thing, and he attacked the New York Times all day yesterday and the day before.
Wow.
So it's great.
Ron, do you have any questions for Nomi on this?
Yeah, I was thinking about, and you probably are more fluent in this than I am, Nomi, but there was the legislation that Andrew Cuomo tried to push forward in January that really screwed over, I think, low-level housing in New York City. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did the IDC have any involvement in that?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, I don't know the nuances of like how it went through, and I actually should go back and look at it. But they've in the budget process, for instance, when they were talking about 421A, which is essentially what you're talking about, it gives benefits to these large developers in New York State. So essentially, like there are these really big developers in New York State who have all this power. And it's affecting low-income housing and affordable housing in New York because there's a plan that would essentially give affordable housing every time there's a new development put in. It would give affordable housing to a certain number of units, right? Their defense is that the more they can build, the more affordable housing there will be. When the reality is the more you build affordable housing, the better it is for everybody. It also keeps rents down. The more, large high-rises you build, it keeps rents up for everybody and drives more people out who can't afford. And then you have to create more affordable housing. So it's sort of this like endless loop. And the developers give Cuomo a lot of money and the IDC a lot of money. So, and to be fair, like, a lot of Democrats money too. So it's a hot issue in New York, and it's a little complicated. But it was not addressed in the budget, which is ultimately, the buck stops at the budget.
Okay.
All right. So
does that answer it?
Yeah. No, that was good. And yeah, I mean, I remember we covered it briefly on the Jimmy Dore show, but that was a couple months ago, and I know you have more firsthand experience on that coast than I do. So.
Well, I appreciate you even being concerned over it.
That's an important issue. I mean, it's
well, I thought it was interesting because it's a really good example of faux progressivism, too, because the way Andrew Cuomo sold that, he really made it seem like he was helping in terms of housing. But then when you read between the lines, you saw what was really going on.
Exactly. And that's sort of the way he does things. I love the New York Times piece that was put out, the day after the education free tuition plan was signed, and then a couple of days later in their next report, there was a quote from a good government leader who basically said, everything Andrew Cuomo does, he starts at what the headline is going to be and then works backwards. That's essentially what he says. And I think that's spot on.
I agree. Yeah, that's really good. I want to read that article now. I think that is spot on as well.
Well, and
what was the?
Oh, go ahead.
What was the pulse in New York City, Nomi? Of do you remember the speech that he gave where and it was one of the most ridiculous things I ever heard, and hilarious on some level and completely insensitive on other levels, where he said, "As a New Yorker, I am black. As a New Yorker, I am gay." You remember that video? What was what was the pulse in New York City? Like in response to that video? I mean, we covered the video and we kind of had a field day with it. But what was kind of the atmosphere like in response to that in New York City? Where was anyone in favor, or were most people like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen? What a moron! Or what was kind of the pulse that you were calling?
I don't know. I think that was before Trump, and everything changed after Trump. So people who may have been more forgiving of Andrew Cuomo in the past because they didn't know or understand some of the dynamics in Albany, those people, I think, are paying attention and really paying attention to his role and how, when he says something, does he follow up, and what is his link to the IDC? I think people are getting woke on that issue, right? The progressives in New York are always very well informed, and they're always incredibly skeptical of anything from Andrew Cuomo or even the Democrats, because, in the past, the Democrats in the Senate, for instance, they were trying to work with the other side, trying to get the IDC to come back. I think in the post-Trump world, they call them the mainline Democrats. The mainline Democrats, they would keep their fights behind closed doors, right? And only if you really understood was the dynamics of Albany did you know who hated each other and who was fighting. But for the most part, they kept their fights behind closed doors and not public. Now they're fully public. So everyone's like, things are shifting. And so I think that speech, when I watched it, I like almost vomited. They probably were like, rah, 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 Hillary's great. This is on the Women's Equality Party line. Which is literally a party that Andrew Cuomo created out of really the result of Zephyr Teachout's challenge of him. And he created this women's equality line, and it's just a bullshit party. That's all.
Yeah, cool, thanks.
Yeah, I think. I think this whole thing with Cuomo is he's probably just setting himself up for a run for 2020. But that's my whole read of that situation.
Yeah.
So
totally, and that's why I think this is such a. It's not just because it's New York. New York is a really fascinating place, and it's very important in progress. But the fact that it's somebody who clearly wants to run for president is even more ridiculous.
All right. So, is there anything else that you want to add on the IDC race or the IDC issue?
I would say that if you're from New York or not, listen. Call these people, tweet at them, show up to these town halls and these meetings. I mean, one of the most amazing things I saw last week was someone screenshot a picture of Senator Jose Peralta's office, and there were all these signs taped up on his office walls on the weekends outside the doors of, IDC equals Republican or equals GOP, and Peralta, we didn't elect you so you could vote against the DREAM Act, or people are really informed and they're feeling it, and they're incredibly sensitive. They have some spokespeople on the internet who are attacking reporters, really ruthless, and they're paid for by taxpayers, by the way, these spokespeople.
Yeah.
So I just think that the more pressure they feel, the better it is. And when you cover this story and you link it to the national level because this guy wants to be president, I think it's really that's just how this stuff builds up. And if we can link it to the DNC also, get Tom Perez to respond, awesome.
Yeah. So I have a list of people who are on the IDC: Jeffrey Klein, David J. Valesky, David Carlucci, Diane Savino, Tony Avila, Jose Peralta, Jesse Hamilton, and Marisol Alcantara. So those are the people that you should get a hold of if you care about this issue, and you probably should. You should care about this issue because it has national implications as well. So,
and just a note about one of them you mentioned, Jeff Klein. Jeff Klein started the IDC. He started it with Diane Savino, 6-7 years ago at this point. And he started it, this is sort of what everybody thinks and knows, but no one says out loud. He started it because he wasn't going to be, when the Democrats got the majority in the Senate, because he was in the Democratic Senate and he was a leader, he wasn't going to be a majority leader. And that's for a lot of reasons. Number one, traditionally it goes to somebody from the city who's a person of color to be more reflective of the state. But also because he ran the Democratic Party into the ground. They were in debt. He wasn't winning seats. It wasn't until new people came in and took hold of leadership that they started to win again. And he is vengeful, and he's really angry about that. And it really comes down to personal vendettas.
Wow.
So that's why he created the IDC.
Fascinating. That's incredibly interesting. So, look, I want to thank you for your time, Nomiki. Thank you so much. Hey, check her out, youtube.com/TYTpolitics. She does some great reporting there. Congratulations again on being on the Unity Commission. Hopefully some good comes out of that.
Thank you.
And again, thank you for your time. Hopefully you'll come and do this again.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for covering this. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll see you later.
Take care.
All right. So what we're going to do here after this is we're going to let's get into some more Democratic corruption. This is fun. We're just going to beat up the Democrats all day. Does it sound good, Ron?
Yeah, I'm down.
All right. So let's go into some corporate lobbying. And the Democratic Party continues to take more and more money from corporate interests. According to documents reviewed by Maplight in the International Business Times, they have recently received a fresh infusion of cash from these giant corporations. Now, this comes into party coffers as House Democrats faced pressure to break from their party to support Trump administration initiatives that could, of course, benefit these giant corporations. Things like corporate tax cuts and regulatory reform, as in cutting it. Now, a filing last week by the Democratic Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the DCCC, shows 4 corporate lobbyists had raised more than $380,000 for the organization, the primary campaign arm for the Democratic House candidates, between January and March. Now, the 3-month figure is nearly 4 times as much as the amount lobbyists raised for the DCCC during the entire 2016 election cycle. That's actually super important. So they're raising more money now than they did before. Well, what changed? Well, first let me give you the numbers. Now, in all, the DCCC reported raising $31 million in the first quarter of 2017. That is an amazing amount of money. Now, this follows the DNC's decision to, of course, end the ban on lobbyist donations. That was put into place by former President Barack Obama. Now, during the election, you guys remember, we reported on this, disgraced chairwoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I kind of wanted to say it a little bit like Jimmy Dore for a second there. But that's, I'm not going to do that. Fucking Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She ended the ban. And then later on, during the DNC elections, corporate Democrats, of course, voted to not reinstate the ban despite huge pressure from progressives. Now, the International Business Times notes that although the DCCC never prohibited lobbyist donations, the committee reported only about $100,000 in funds bundled by lobbyists in all of 2015 and 2016. Now, so those 2 years, $100,000, and in the first quarter of 2017, $31 million. Those are amazing sums. Like, just the differences in the sums of money that we have going into the DNC, the DCCC. And look, it's all coming from corporations. Most of those donations, most of these donors are giant multinational corporations. Now, the ones that are not giant multinational corporations are Clinton, former fundraisers for the Clinton campaign, who, of course, in their joint fundraising account with the DNC. Now, I want to give you an example of a couple of the people here before I get into your opinion on this, Ron. We've got Tony Podesta of the Podesta Group, brother of John Podesta, whose emails got hacked by somebody and released by WikiLeaks. So you have him, Tony Podesta, founder of the Podesta Group, raising $131,000 for the DCCC and donating $5,000 to committee this year. His client list includes Walmart, Wells Fargo, as well as defense contractors Lockheed Martin, and Bay Systems. Now,
all good progressive groups.
Oh, wonderful progressive groups. Now, Trump and House Republicans have promised to repeal Dodd-Frank. And, of course, House Democrats, their votes could be crucial in any effort to repeal the effort. So what does this have to do with Podesta's group? Podesta's firm has lobbied for Wells Fargo on financial services regulation. The Podesta Group also lobbied on Dodd-Frank for the BMO Financial Corporation and the Investment Company Institute, a trade association representing the mutual fund industry. So that's one piece of legislation where all this corporate money could go to influence corporate Democrats to get them to get rid of regulations. Look, and Dodd-Frank's already weak enough as it is. They're pretty much gunning to get rid of it completely, and they're going to need the Democrats' help to do it. And here comes that corporate money to the rescue. At a time where the Democrats need to be distancing themselves and cutting themselves off completely to corporate money. There's more. Now, Trump's also expected to seek House votes to lower corporate taxes. Federal records showed that in 2016, Podesta lobbied for Credit Suisse Securities, Oracle, and Walmart on the issue of corporate tax reform. This is this one guy, right? One guy, one lobbying firm. And ironically, while Democrats are freaking out about Russia, right? Well, maybe they should look into, again, Tony Podesta, who was hired to lobby for Sberbank, a Russian-owned state bank. And of course, he is also registered to lobby for at least 6 other foreign governments, including Saudi Arabia and Iraq. Podesta was one of the biggest bundlers for the Clinton campaign, and now for the DCCC. So look at that. You also have Steve Elmendorf, who raised $55,000 for the DCCC, leading who leads the lobbying and public relations firm Subject Matter. His firm lobbied on Dodd-Frank, of course, and for clients that include Goldman Sachs, MetLife, and 3 financial industry trade associations. You also have one of Elmendorf's clients, CIT Group, recently giving Steven Mnuchin $11 million upon being appointed as Treasury Secretary to Donald Trump. He's also lobbied for General Electric and on behalf of News Corporation on the issue of corporate tax policy. On and on and on. This is only a couple of these guys, right? There are more examples. You should check out Sirota's piece on the International Business Times. Point is, you got to follow the money, right? And look, if the Democrats keep taking all this money and then vote with the Republicans, well, then you're going to know what really made them do that. It's the money. It's always the money. So I guess the point that I want to get to is the Democrats, it's kind of funny because they're supposed to be the resistance, Ron. Well, what are they resisting if they're taking all this corporate money and helping Trump get his policies passed? What kind of resistance are
change.
they? What's that?
Progressive change.
Is that what that is?
That's what they're resisting, yeah. That's exactly what the Democrats are resisting. That's
right.
Why it's the only way they should be calling themselves the resistance. What are they resisting? They're resisting actual progressive change.
That's true. See, these Democrats, they haven't learned their lesson. They're still taking this corporate money, and they're still doing the very things that make them lose elections. But again, as we've discussed, it doesn't really matter to them. They're paid to lose. Either, like, if they win, they get money. If they lose, they still get the money. Maybe it's the money that's the problem. Maybe we need to get rid of that money, that incentive, as well as these Democrats who want to take it.
I want to make a fun analogy here. So, I used to live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I've seen a lot of stuff when it comes to the music industry in that city. And one of the things I saw, there was this singer, and she came from a lot of privilege. So a company was set up for her. They hired a radio promotion team. They hired the top band that money could get, the top musicians in Nashville. They hired a crew. They hired a label. They funded their own record label. You get the idea. Mm-hmm. They had this ridiculous production. They sunk literally millions of dollars into this. But she never really practiced. She never bothered working on singing. She was just too busy shopping all day. The songs weren't that great. And what would they do? They would throw more money at it. Hey, we're not getting radio play. Let's pay the radio promotion team more. Let's hire a different one. Let's hire another person. And the radio promotion team would say, no, you're giving us, you can't buy a number. You have to have something people like. You have to have something here. There's nothing here to sell. So my point is, that's the Democratic Party. That's the logic they go by. Well, we need to raise more money. We didn't raise enough money. We need to convince these donors. And you can find the clips of the DNC Treasury folks and stuff like that talking about how we need to get big business to want to invest with Democrats. We need to convince them that Democrats have their interests in line. No, how about a platform that people can get behind? How about getting behind single-payer health care? How about getting behind free college? How about getting behind a living wage? How about getting behind a Green New Deal? How about getting behind actually being anti-war? Because the majority of the country doesn't favor the shit that we do, doesn't favor the military-industrial complex. The majority of the country doesn't want that. How about getting behind a platform that the majority of the people that live here want instead of bending to your donors? It's the same concept. Well, instead of having good music, let's just throw more money to the radio. Well, instead of having a good platform, let's just throw more money. Let's try to get more money into this and throw more money at losing strategies, at shit ground games, and at bought candidates.
Do you know?
And that's what the Democratic Party is.
And do you know who they're listening more to than they are the people? They're listening to their damn consultants. The consultants are telling them, no. All you need is to be more pro-corporate. You need to be more pro-establishment. People love business. Look, people like small business. People do not like large business. There are polls out there that showed, like, yeah, of course, everybody likes small business, right? Or at least they like the idea of small business, right? They hate large corporations. They hate corruption. They hate it when the people that they elect, that they put into office to represent them, don't represent them and represent big corporations that are crushing them right now. They hate that. So why would you continue to do the same thing? Well, they're getting bad advice from all the consultants, from the consultant class, and at the same time, they're getting lots and lots of money to lose. And if they win, they win, and they still get the money. If they lose, they get the money. So either way, they win. And then, of course, when they're out of office, oh, look, here comes this fancy lobbying job. Let's just go right through that revolving door and get paid. It's about the money. You got to follow the money. This is why we got to get rid of the money. And this is why we got to find real Democrats, real progressives, who are not going to take the money. It's not about taking over the party. It's bringing it back to what it used to be. The corporate Democrats and the centrists and the Hillary Clinton Democrats, they're not real Democrats.
No.
And you keep pointing this out to me, Ron, and it's sunk in. You're right. We are not the insurgency. They were the insurgency, and they won. So now it's time we got to fight back as real Democrats, real progressives, to champion the values of FDR, to champion the values of progressive policy, and to push that. Because that's what the majority of Americans want. They don't want this faux-aggressive crap. They don't want this right-wing corporatist crap. What they want is progressive policy. And we need a party that actually gives it to them, that actually fights for it. And we're not doing that with these fake Clinton corporate Democrats. They need to be gone. Got to get rid of them. And we've got to get that influence of money out of our political system.
Yeah.
Forever going to win.
Yeah, when the Democrats were the party of FDR, they won. They won and they won and they won. They won bigly, all right. They won real bigly. Like, then something changed.
Their heads were spinning. They were winning so much.
Oh yeah.
And then they won so much. They were so sick and tired of winning. And then what happened? Yeah. We got more money.
Then neoliberalism happened. Hashtag sad.
Hashtag sad. And look, we had those very important Supreme Court decisions, right? You have Buckley Valeo. You had First Bank versus Bellotti, right? Corporations are people, and they have unlimited speech rights. And I believe it was Nixon that was like, hey, I want to buy a Supreme Court seat. Okay, let's do that. So they bought a Supreme Court seat, turned the court conservative, turned it into big money, big corporations. And of course, that led to both parties taking tremendous amounts of money from big companies and abandoning the values that they were both founded on.
Don't forget that, Democrats will let court seats get stolen from them. Hashtag Obama.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, we weren't fans of Merrick Garland, but doesn't matter. That was stolen. That was stolen from him. So, again, with the hashtag sad, hashtag Bigley. But we've got to look. Something's got to change. This is unsustainable the way that it is right now, and something's going to break. Something's going to change. Hopefully, it doesn't get too broken. Certain things don't get too broken, like the American people. The system, it already is broken. We might as well just, in some ways, wipe some of the stuff clean and start again. And that would of course be our campaign finance system. But anyway.
It's a start, yeah.
Yeah, it's a start. Got a big job ahead of us. All right. So let's go to our next story. Let's talk about Russia. All right. Climate change may literally blow up Russia. Now, Ron, how's that for a Russia story?
It's different than the usual, man. Like
Different
you said,
than the usual Russia story. Exactly. Now,
you
this
did
is
promise
according.
that.
This is according to the Think Progress blog, which says that Russian scientists have recently discovered some 7,000 underground methane bubbles in Siberia that could explode at any time. Explode, I'm not kidding. Now, these bubbles are filled with methane, and they have a term for them. Now, they haven't exactly been seen before. This is not really a new phenomenon, but this is something that we've just kind of discovered. Like, it was there, but we just figured it out. And it's, again, one of the effects of climate change. Now, these are called alternative pingos. Now, that sounds like something Donald Trump would try to ban from the country. But, okay, so well, first, to understand what an alternative pingo is, you have to understand what a pingo is. It's essentially an ice bubble covered by earth, soil, right? So it's underground, you don't see it. Now, alternative pingos are the same kind of thing, but it's earth-covered pockets of frozen methane and CO2 instead of water ice. And sometimes there's natural gas in these as well. Now, most of Siberia, as you might or might not know, is covered with permafrost, which permafrost has, traps a lot of gases, including carbon dioxide and methane. Now, it turns out there's this weird thing where when the planet warms, it makes things melt. And when these melt, when the permafrost melts in certain areas, well, it creates these time bombs that are under the surface of the Earth. Now, this is a Russian Academy science spokesperson who said the appearance of these at such high latitudes is most likely linked to thawing permafrost, which is in turn linked to an overall rise in temperature in the north of Eurasia during the last several decades. Now, this has got a lot of scientists fairly concerned for several reasons. First, methane traps about 86 times as much heat as CO2 over a 20-year period. So it's a very potent greenhouse gas. Now, thawing permafrost, of course, releases both CO2 and methane. If, as it appears, a lot of methane is generated from this, then, you get the melting permafrost, you get more methane in the air. Well, you're going to have even more warming, stuff that scientists previously didn't even account for. So the projections of global warming or climate change are going to be worse. Now, second, a recent study found global warming will defrost much more permafrost than we actually thought. That's a double whammy. Third, permafrost has already been warming at an alarming rate. In general, the Arctic warms twice as fast as the planet as a whole. So, let me give you an example. Last summer saw an abnormally warm summer in 2016 on the Yamal Peninsula of Siberia, where many of these bubbles have been found. Coincidence? I think not. And in March, Siberia again saw stunning temperatures, according to NASA's latest monthly report. Globally, it was the second hottest March on record, losing out to only March of 2016. And, of course, I believe this March will probably lose out to March of 2018, on and on and on, as it gets warmer. Parts of Siberia and the Arctic were as much as 12.1 degrees Celsius, or 22 degrees Fahrenheit, above the 1951 to 1980 average. That is a disaster. Now, if you don't give a shit about Russia, which, by the way, the methane isn't just going to stay over Russia. The atmosphere kind of surrounds all of us, okay? But say you're an idiot who doesn't know anything, nor do you care about what happens to Russia, and you're only worried about America, well, I've got some bad news for you on that. Vladimir E. Romanowski, a permafrost decay expert at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks, told the Washington Post that the methane-filled alternative pingos are definitely related to warming and could appear in Canada or Alaska, so in North America. Quote, it is just a matter of time when some of those craters appear in North America as well. Romanowski said, already several pingos have emerged right under the Alaskan pipeline. The scientist said, if one of those bulges turned out to be an alternative pingo, that's not good news either. And why is that not good news, Ron? Because they fucking explode. That's why.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, see, the Washington Post explains, when researchers drill straight down into a traditional pingo, they hit the kernel of ice at the center. Coming in from the sides, the drillers might discover water close to the freezing point or possibly supercooled. But what if someone were to take a drill to an alternative pingo? It's almost like, I don't know. You know what? I was going to make an alternative right joke. I'm gonna avoid that, actually. Maybe you can later on. Now, if somebody were to take a drill to an alternative pingo, that is not good news, as Romanowski put it. The gas within the hill is not only under immense pressure, but it happens to be quite flammable. Now, some of these humps are 50 to 100 yards across, up to a tenth of the size of a classical pingo. Now, Romanowski said it was unknown exactly how the alternative pingos were formed, but he has an idea. In place of an ice kernel, alternative pingos may contain methane hydrate, the milky solid that forms when water mixes with natural gas and freezes. So these are basically filled with, some of these are filled with natural gas. So yeah, that's going to explode. Not good.
Wow.
And when they explode, they leave a giant crater. Now, last year, social media went nuts over some of these giant Russian craters that we found, that essentially what we thought came out of nowhere. Well, scientists think that since there wasn't a lot of material that was ejected from this site and other craters, that it had to be one of these pingos. Since there wasn't a lot of land to basically spew out when they explode, it's more of like, okay, so there wasn't really a lot of land to begin with. It was this frozen ice, natural gas methane mixture. Okay. In fact, in the bottom of one of these craters that they found, explored a year after it was formed, it had methane gas concentrations as high as 6%. At that concentration, Romanowski said, the air itself could be ignited. That's bad. That's a year after it was formed. Like, it's not under the ice anymore. It's been released. And yet there's still enough methane there to blow up the air. This is a disaster waiting. And imagine if one of these, Ron, ends up under a pipeline. Ooh. Even more of a disaster. So that's what climate change is doing.
Good thing it's not real, man.
Good thing it's a Chinese hoax, man.
Good thing they just made that up. Or I'd be really worried. But good science fiction story, Jeff. Boy, that's. Yeah. What if that was real? Shwoo. Oh.
Yeah, I know, right? Just avoid Siberia, just in case. No, this, like, if there's enough of this, I mean, you could see parts of Russia explode. Now, I'm sure that, some Democrats are out there cheering it. Yeah, explode Russia. That's what we want to do anyway,
sadly,
right?
Yeah, sadly, yeah, you're right. They're doing their best McCarthy impressions and are beating the drum for World War III because they're progressive.
Let's not. Let's avoid that.
I agree.
I'd rather not make countries explode, and I'd rather not make the conditions through our inaction of climate change to make countries explode on their own. Because again, what happens there, all that methane gets released up in the atmosphere. Well, that's going to make it much more difficult for us, especially with how concentrated that greenhouse gas is. This is not a good situation. We are not winning in this case.
Well, what's the time frame on all this?
That I'm not sure. I mean, we've already seen them pop up.
So they're not clear on that yet.
Not that I've read, but we're already seeing these pop up, and they seem to be happening more frequently in Russia. That we're seeing these pingos and alternative pingos pop up, and we're just scratching the surface of what's going on, and they're not exactly 100% sure on how they form, and all the different factors that lead up into creating this. So, but they're thinking that climate change is the major factor with all the melting of the permafrost.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I think we better go ahead and pingo something about climate change. Sorry, I tried to make a pun.
Yeah.
I failed miserably.
No, Pingo, do something or something. I don't know.
Pingo, do something about climate change.
There you go.
There you go.
Don't be an alternative Pingo.
That's right.
Don't be
Those
a member
guys
of the
are
alt
phonies.
Pingo. Sad.
But no, I mean, to go broad with it, I mean, the fact that we still have climate change deniers, which at least is a term that's embraced now. Before, people would
Thank
say,
goodness.
"Oh, well, I don't believe in climate." That's not something you can or can't believe in. And I've went on that spiel before. I'm not going to do it again. But you can't believe or not believe in something that is evidence-based and the evidence is there. That's not how the concept of belief works. You either accept climate change or you just deny that it's there. So, but it's amazing that we still have climate change deniers as elected officials. That's amazing to me.
Yeah, well, who's the guy that had the snowball? Can't think of his name for some reason.
I know what you're talking about. All right. I
name
know what you're talking
escapes me.
about, but yeah, I don't remember.
Just bringing a snowball. Yeah, well, look. It was cold outside. It was cold yesterday. I think what it has to do with, and I kind of saw an interesting tweet from. Well, it was a tweet, but it was actually of a quote of somebody who was an astronaut who said, "Hey, I want to drag some of these politicians out to the moon, right, and have them look at Earth, because what they're doing, the things that they talk about, their disagreements are so incredibly petty that we would just want to drag them out here and say, look at this, you son of a bitch. This is what you're doing. This is what, like, you need to think of the big picture and think of what's really important. You want to save that." And how much is your donations from the fossil fuel industry worth? Is it worth destroying that? Look at that, you son of a bitch. That's what it made me think of.
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, all they think about is short-term, and mainly short-term profit, how they're going to profit off this, off fossil fuels. But in the end, look, we're not going to, as a species, profit from continued use of fossil fuels. We're destroying ourselves at the expense of extreme capitalism. And that is sad. Well, we're killing ourselves over fake money.
Yeah.
So if you want to put a big hashtag sad on that one,
yeah, might as
I'm
well.
right there.
Hashtag sad.
Yeah. Okay. That's enough. We're gonna have the Trump supporter story tomorrow. I'm gonna make fun of some beta cucks on the Trump side. I'm sorry. I'm gonna enjoy using their own terminology against them because it's fun. That's why. But anyway, you want to head out of here, Ron?
Yeah. Time for me to depart.
All right. So thank you so much, Ron Placone, contributor to TYT Nation. Check out his stuff. If you have anything you want
For the day.
All right.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for being on, Ron. We'll see you next Tuesday.
All right.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for going around the nation with me today. I didn't get a chance to do patron shout-outs, so I'm going to do that right now. I want to thank the newest patrons, Vaughn J, $5. $2 from Susan G. Thank you, Susan. $1 from Ben N. And $3 from Melissa K. $5 from Raphael C. And I think that's all we had that was new today. So again, thank you. Patreon.com/TYTNation podcast as well. That together. I'm not quite entirely sure how to do it yet. So I'll figure that out, and we'll start having downloadable podcasts if I can get that thing working. So just for the patrons. So all right, everybody, thanks for going around the nation with me today. Thanks to my guest, of course, Ron Placone, and Nomiki Konst for joining me today. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Love you guys, and remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation.